Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Eric Vernsten. Eric is a comedian, attorney, and financial advisor. He wows crowds, big and small, whether it be a jury trial or speech, or a virtual crowd during Toastmasters or his podcast. His podcast, Laugh and Learn with Vern, interviews unique people on interesting subjects, from parallels of the United States and Rome to tales from a barber's chair. For all things Eric, please visit his website and subscribe to his newsletter, laughandlearnvern.ghost.io. And we'll have that in the show notes so you'll know exactly how to find it. So please join me in welcoming Eric Vernsten. Welcome, Eric.
Tammy, thank you for having me. I got to give you an update already, another one. So it's actually now, because I change things a lot, as we'll talk about. It's Eric Vernsten, EricVernsten.ghost.io.
Okay, well, we'll put that in the show notes then. I still like the sound of Laugh and Learn Vern, but that's okay. Not to worry. We'll correct that. So Eric, as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to start at the beginning and talk about the early years, maybe something formative or something that influenced you as a younger person. Take us back to some of your early years and tell us about where things began for you.
One of my first memories was summer 94. My mom was home. I think she's working part-time, but I remember she was home a lot during the day. Mm-hmm. And her and I think my older brother was there, but he was 4 at the time. We watched the OJ Simpson trial every single day. Wow. Nonstop. We consumed it. And another thing my family would do a lot on Friday nights is watch Dateline NBC or CBS, one of those crime shows. So from a younger age, I was interested in law. I just found it just kind of interesting. And I was known as a talker.
So how old were you then? When you said you were always interested in law and you were a talker, was that connected somehow to your interest in law, or what sparked your interest I don't know what age you were at that point, but
it's about 7.
Okay.
7. And then the other thing is I was just a talker. So I was a straight A student except art class. Art class was the only one I couldn't get an A because I would just walk around talking to people and I would make jokes about their projects. I would do something else. And then finally they'd be like, hey, you need to finish up. And so I'd scramble, put something together, throw my clay in the kiln or whatever. But that's how I was. I was just a kind of a schmoozer, and what time you come? You want to come over and hang out? What time you want to come over? Oh, you want to come over after school? Oh, I don't know if I can do it after school. Can you do 6? Like, even back then, I was negotiating in terms of hanging out.
So you were generally a great student and a great connector. It sounds like, and a schmoozer, and as we know, you did become a lawyer. So was that something that you held? Was that a vision that you held on to from that young age onward, or was that something that kind of ebbed and flowed on your mind?
It was an ebb and flow. It was one of these things where, Eric likes to talk and he likes to argue with people. He should be a lawyer. It wasn't. Yeah, it was kind of one of those. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. I don't really know anything about it. I've seen it on TV. Yeah. And then it would ebb and flow. Middle school and high school, I didn't really know what I was doing. And then high school and college, I wanted to get into pro sports. And I thought about being either an agent. So that's kind of where the lawyer part came in at that point, or working as a general manager. I wanted to do front office. So I got a job between my junior and senior year of college working for the Austin Toros, now the I think they're the Austin Spurs. And that was in Austin, Texas. And it was a marketing internship. I had no marketing experience, but what I did was I said, I need to get into pro sports. I really want to. So like the prior year of college, I was a history major, and one of the history professors wrote a book about like the history of, I don't remember, like, I think it was like the history of like Puerto Rican baseball or something like that. It was pretty unique. So and he was giving a talk. Yeah. And I didn't really know him well. So like, I think in a day or two, I literally bought the book. It was like 500 pages, just threw everything on the side, read the book, and then went to go to his talk. And I think it got canceled. And I was desperate to get into sports. And so I ended up mailing out resumes and cover letters to, I want to say, every NBA minor league team, as well as a bunch of minor league baseball teams, just trying to do anything. And then very end of April, I got a call from the Austin Toros saying, hey, we have an unpaid internship. Do you want this? And one of the things I've found throughout life, and now it's literally philosophy, is I just kind of jump. I just say, yeah, I'll do that. So I called my parents and said, hey, I'm moving to Austin this summer. I got a job. It doesn't pay. So I don't really know what I'm going to do, but I'll figure it out. And my dad said, I'll lend you $500. You know, that should probably work for rent for at least like a month and some food. Mm-hmm. My parents are pretty supportive. My mom would have never let me starve. That it was probably more of a revolving line of credit than just a $500 loan. But I looked at that. I looked at that as like, okay, make it work. So I ended up moving to Austin for that summer. I found an Airbnb with like 4 or 5 other guys. And then I did the internship in the morning. And then I had a bevy of jobs. So one of them was, I was a wine sampler. Yeah. So I'd go to, so in Austin, at the time you can only serve wine in liquor stores and like grocery stores. So I'd go to grocery stores and liquor stores on the weekend and set up displays for 2 or 3 hours at a time. Paid pretty good. It was like, we're talking summer 2008.
Yeah.
So it was like $15 an hour.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And then I was a server at California Pizza Kitchen. I did some telemarketing. So my job at the University of Illinois was a student caller. Ask for donations.
Perfect jobs for you. All those were perfect jobs for you.
Yeah. So
you got to talk, right?
Exactly. Yeah. even if I didn't consciously think it. But yeah, so I worked those, and I think I did something else. Student staffing. I was a student staffer. So I'd get a call every couple of weeks and say, hey, can you like go to this event? I think one point it was like an Accenture something or other. And so I had to wear like a shirt and tie. And I think I was like, sir, I think I was checking people in, or sir, I don't remember. It's vague, but like I needed money.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You have no money.
Right. So I'm curious though, when you did the marketing internship, you didn't care what they asked you to do. You were going, you wanted to get into sports. So you had that exposure that summer. Did your zest for getting into sports continue from there?
It did. And the following summer, I got a paid job in Austin doing season ticket sales.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah.
So with them as well then?
Yes, with them. So I moved back down. And within a few weeks, I realized that I hate this. And
what did you hate?
I thought that I was calling I thought I was calling in a lose-lose situation. And I thought that the people first off, a lot of people I was calling didn't speak English. So I was like, why am I calling people that I can't even communicate with? I thought that was a big problem. So that was my one issue. And the other one is, and this was on me, I didn't take enough initiative to really get into the role. I just graduated from college. I'd been drinking a ton. I still wanted to go out and party. My priorities weren't in the right place. So I didn't give myself enough to the job. And I was like, I don't think it's for me. I mean, looking at it back, ironically, the guy who I shared an office with, his name's Alan Schlesinger, he ended up becoming like the 3 or 4 time NBD League ticket sales guy of the year. He's incredible. And he ended up getting a job with the San Antonio Spurs doing like luxury suites or something like that. We still talk a little, but literally like I was in the room with the best salesman in the entire league. And, you look back and you're like, I blew that opportunity to learn from him. But at the time I was young and I didn't know what I really wanted.
Yeah. That happens, right?
Yeah. I didn't see the forest through the trees.
Well, I think that happens with a lot of people at that age. And it sounds like at that point, that job wasn't really about, I mean, it wasn't about sports anymore.
No.
Yeah.
And I kind of figured that out. I ended up having a call. So one of the things I do, and you do a great job of this, is, you ask questions and you're not afraid to ask things. And so I said, hey, I don't think this is for me. And so there was like a kind of a mutual parting where they're like, well, because it was minimum wage. And they said, well, we can't offer you minimum wage anymore, but we'll offer you like straight commission. I said, I don't really want to do that. I think I want to go to law school.
Oh, we're already at that point.
Yeah. Because it had been in my head, because my junior and senior year, a few of my friends were studying for the LSAT. And I was like, oh yeah, I could do law school. Kind of one of those like, well, I'm not really studying, but I could totally do that. Just hockey, no idea what the heck I'm talking about, but like, just, I was, 20 years old, slamming beers. Oh yeah, I could go to law school. Sure. You're doing it. I could totally do that. So it's kind of in my head. I was almost like, yeah, I could do that. Like they're doing that. I can do that. And then I just kind of let it sit, because I thought the sports thing was really what I wanted to do. And then I had a call. The guy's name's Del Demps. So now he's the former general manager for the New Orleans Pelicans, the NBA team. But at the time he was working for the Toros. He was still high up in the Spurs organization. He wasn't quite general manager yet. I think he became general manager a couple years later. I think he drafted Anthony Davis. And I had a call with him and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about going to law school. I still want to be a GM. What do you think? And he was saying, if you go to law school, good, but you're going to need to also learn, you got to learn basketball. Like you didn't play competitively. You didn't, even in high school. So you don't know anything. So he was saying I should be a manager of a basketball team while also doing full-time law school. And it was at that point, I kind of did the math in my head and I was like, I'm not willing to do that because I don't know what law school is like. I don't know the time commitments on both. And it just kind of sounded miserable. So I said, you know what, let's put that one aside. If it happens later, if there's an opportunity later on, maybe. But looking at how the industry evolved, I don't even think that would have worked because it became more statistics and analytic oriented. You either kind of had to be statistics or analytic oriented, or you need to be like an old school basketball guy who understands the game. Yeah. The lawyer who kind of dabbled a little bit, that would have been more of the agent route.
Yeah.
But I wasn't there.
Right. Well, it sounds like that was a bit of a turning point for you in some respects. Like you had to evaluate the situation and kind of make a grown-up decision at that point a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. A little bit. Yeah. I still remember we had that call. I was in a hotel room, I think in Arkansas. I was driving back and I got off the phone and I was like, man, okay, what do I do? This isn't
so you had left the ticket sales job though at that point, right? But you were still sort of, you were thinking about law school, you were entertaining the idea of staying in sports and kind of in between things, it sounds like.
Yeah. So I moved back home.
Oh, okay.
And at the time, one of my old roommates from college was back at our university. And he was getting his master's in accounting and also studying for the LSAT. So he's like, hey, Eric, why don't you move back in with me? It'll be fun. We'll study for the LSAT together.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a blast. Studying for the LSAT. And here I am. Because I had studied for it a little bit over the summer and I was like, okay. So instead of moving home and saving money and doing probably what the more responsible thing would have been, I said, no, I'll move back to my college town. And it was a 9-month off and on, just punch in the face. It was rough. I took the worst part was, it was more of an ego problem, but so I started working at Buffalo Wild Wings and I would see people that were younger than me, that were like seniors or juniors I used to, hang out and party with. And they're like, hey, like, what are you still doing here? And I'm like, oh, I work here. And they're like, just kind of Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, didn't you graduate? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so you just kind of here. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to law school. They're like, oh, where'd you get into? And I'd be like, well, nowhere yet. And they're like, so you're not really going to law school. You're just kind of serving wings. And I'm like, well, yeah. So, but again, nothing wrong with that job, but for some of a Big Ten education and a Big Ten ego, it was tough.
Yeah. Wow. And as you're telling the story, it almost feels like you went back there for a moment.
it was an interesting, now I ended up making the most of it. I ended up hanging out with some people I worked with. I dated someone really, really awesome for a while. And then I also did some sub teaching on the side, which was fun because I'd go to like the high schools and I'd go to like buzz in, they just let me in. They'd be like, you need to get to class. And at one point I was like, yeah, I have a kind of a baby face, and they'd be like, you need to get to class. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And then I'd be like, wait a minute. And I'm like, no, I'm like sub teaching. Like, aren't you here for physics? Like, yeah. And I'd like, no, I'm not. Like,
that's funny.
yeah, it was, I would say it was the medicine the patient needed. It was the medicine the patient needed, because I was in college. I was just, I thought I was Mr. Cool.
Yep.
And I came out, and Austin didn't work out, but I kind of mentally signed off as like, well, I'm just going to law school, so it doesn't really matter that I didn't give myself to this job and didn't really get used to the community. And then once I got to Champaign and I was surrounded, I couldn't run from it anymore. I was like, oh, like you did. And I took the LSAT once. I didn't get the score I wanted. I was upset. I remember my mom called me, and I was just such a jerk on the phone. And it was just kind of I guess it was kind of a dark time where I was like, well, I'm not getting into any law school, and I don't really know what I'm doing, and I have like no money. So what's the plan, dude? Mister, you're so smart. You're not happy and you're broke. So let's figure this out.
Yeah. Oh, and let's clarify. We're talking about Champaign, Illinois.
Champaign, Illinois. Yeah. So I graduated 2009 from University of Illinois.
Yes.
And then I moved back in September, October 2018. Right. 2009.
So you didn't get the score you wanted, and then you didn't get into any law schools at that point. Yeah. So I recall when we spoke prior to this interview, you had said that was it was kind of a kick in the teeth and a humbling year for you. Which, I give you a lot of credit for looking back on that year and seeing, what that year taught you. It sounds like you took a lot away from that year, rather than just looking back on it and saying, I was full of myself or whatever. I think you took a lot of learning away from that.
It was a lot of life lessons that I probably, that all in one, just a lot of rejection and understanding that whatever I was doing wasn't working. So what I started doing was, I kept working various jobs, and then I did a weekend class for the LSAT, just like a weekend, 8-9 hours a day. And then they gave me a workbook after, and I just became obsessive about it. And I would just work the problems over and over again. Leading up to the second test, on Saturday mornings, I would go just like I knew the building I was going to take it in. I would show up at 7:30. I'd have my pencils all lined up. I remember you had to have a plastic baggie with the pencils and an ID and maybe something else, but that was it. So I would time the walk. I would get there and I would go sit down somewhere nearby where I would do it. I would do the 3-4 hours, take the break. I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know how I felt mentally, physically, because you're be dehydrated. You don't want to chug a bunch of coffee and then show up for a 4-hour sit down test.
Right.
So I was like maniacal about it. And I was like, I'm going to get a great score. I have to, like, there's no back against the wall. And then I took it, I got a 161, which is like in the top 80, 83rd percentile, I think. And then I reapplied to law schools with that score. And then I got a call from Southern Illinois University. And I still feel bad a little bit to this day, because they called me. It was like 10 in the morning, and it was like a Wednesday, but I was a server, and people in the industry will just go out any night of the week. So I was out till probably 2 or 3 in the morning the night before. I woke up, I was so hungover, and I get this call, and I had this frog voice, like, oh. They're like, oh, it's Southern Illinois, University School of Law. Is Eric there? I'm like, speaking, and they offered me a full scholarship and everything. And I said, let me think on it, which is hilarious looking back on it. Like, hey, we're willing to give you money to come here. And me, oh yeah, I don't, let me think on it. And then it took a couple months. And then, so fast forward to summer, I moved back home, and I was still dating someone from
where was home?
Crystal Lake, Illinois. It's about an hour northwest of Chicago. Okay. So I moved back home, and I'm still not sure what to do. And I've got this kind of girlfriend, but it's not looking promising. And so my dad and I kind of do this like plus and minuses with Southern and then another law school. And so still can't figure it out. And then a buddy of mine calls me, and he got into SIU law. His name's Brent. And he calls me and says, "Hey, I'm with Alex. Alex was going to be a med student, and now he's like a neurosurgeon." So he studied way more than us. So it makes a lot of sense. But so that you can kind of see where this is going. But Brent goes, "Hey man, we're looking at apartments. Should we only do 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know if I want to go Southern or not." And he goes, "Can you make up your mind in the next like 20 minutes?" Yeah. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to go. I'll go to Southern. That's fine." He goes, "So 3 bedroom?" I go, "Yeah, 3 bedroom." So I got off the phone. I told my parents, I go, "Well, I'm going to Southern." They're like, "What changed?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know. I like Brent, and let's do it." So yeah, that's how I ended up going to law school. That
was a very well thought out decision, Eric. I like the way that happened. Yeah. And so
sure, why not?
I like that. I don't think I've had anyone on the podcast who shared a decision-making process like that. So you should know that you're the first.
Hopefully the last that literally says, "Why did you make this life-altering decision?" Well, someone wants to know if they want to look for 2 or 3 bedroom apartments.
Though, sometimes you just need something kind of relationship-oriented like that, Yeah. That oftentimes is what compels people. It's not even the substance of what you're going to do. It is, relationships that make people turn in a certain direction. It's like, think about jobs, for example. A lot of people might like the work they do, but if they're not getting along well with their boss, they might leave their job because they're miserable. And it's not because they don't like the work. It's because the relationship with the boss is not a good one. So relationships matter a whole lot. So even though it sounds like you made this decision on a whim, in some respects, it was the depth of those friendships that actually compelled you.
Brent was someone who, I'll never forget this. After I took the LSAT the first time, I was very upset. I had like yelled at my parents, and then he called me to see like how I did. I was like, And I think we ended up getting like the same score. And he was just so supportive. And he's like, "You know what, dude, we'll be fine. Don't worry about it." And I remember, so when he was on the phone saying like, "Do you want to do this?" I think it was maybe like, "You know what? Yeah, you were there for me, and you were really supportive when I needed you and didn't even know him that well at the time." Mm-hmm. So I was like, "Yeah, we should live together and go to law school together." And it ended up being a fantastic decision.
Yeah. And, I'll mention one other thing about that, and then we'll move on here. Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, points to a lot of research that shows that when people make a decision in a moment like that, it's usually the right decision, as opposed to all the iterations of should I, shouldn't I, analysis, paralysis, all of that. So, the initial interpretation of, my buddy said, well, should we get a 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom? Okay, I'll do it. Sounds a little bit, maybe a little glib, a little irresponsible, right? Kind of like a young person's decision. But actually, the research would say you did the right thing.
Oh, look at that.
So there you go, right?
Science and intuition coming together.
How about that? And I'm not just trying to turn that around and make you look good here, but so tell us what happened beyond that. You went to law school, right?
Yeah.
And I want to point out one other thing. So you had some rough years there, a few years that were kind of tough. And I think that's not unusual for a lot of people in their early 20s. Are trying to find themselves, trying to figure out who they want to be. They've been basically a student their whole lives.
Yeah.
And in your case, as you said, you were a straight A student, at least up through high school. I don't know how college went for you, but you were a straight A student. You were used to really just everything you did very well. Yeah. And so those sort of, early years after college, were kind of a shock. You were hitting a lot of bumps in the road. You were trying to figure out who you were in this whole new context of life. And I think a lot of people, kind of hit a few, detours here and there. So I don't think that's all that unusual. But it's you're painting a pretty vivid picture of that experience. So you went on to go to law school, and you actually did a dual degree in your program, right? You didn't just do a JD, did you?
I started off that way.
Yeah.
And then I had a summer where I went to Ireland for a month, which was so fun. And then I did a judicial externship after that, which is essentially, I just kind of hung around some lawyers and wrote some stuff. Wasn't anything. Now, I mean, I'm sure everything I wrote was just complete garbage, but you don't know what you don't know in life, and you don't know what you don't know as a law student.
Right.
You don't know like anything. Right. But I had enough where I was, I don't know why, but it was just, here's what it was. I was meeting, and this is another thing I think that people need to continue to keep in touch and reach out to people, because I had a meeting with a mentor of mine, an old professor that I just liked. And she just said some comment, "Hey, you got a lot of credits. You could probably do a JD MBA if you want." And I said, I just kind of did the math in my head about like, would I be more marketable with the JD MBA? Yes.
And was this all part of this scholarship you had too?
I had to pay for the MBA part.
Oh, okay.
I had to pay, but it wasn't too bad. The way it worked is I had to do, so then that was after my first year. So then between the summer or the winter break between my first and second year, I came back a week or two early, and did a binge course on like some basics for the MBA. I did that for 2 weeks. And then for the next year and a half, I did a full credit load of JD/MBA classes. So I came out about a semester or a semester and a half extra credit. So when everyone else was coasting their third year, I was max classes.
So what was your motivation for doing the dual degree?
I thought it would give me a great shot at a really nice job. I thought it would give me a great shot at a nice job and a career. And one of the things I've done I don't want to say whole life, but at least the last 10, 15 years is kind of look at like, how can I maximize my floor and give myself an unlimited ceiling? So how can I see? And that to me was like, you'll have both. You'll be able to find something.
Mm-hmm. Did you know when you went to law school what kind of law you wanted to practice, or did you have some idea during law school?
I said one of two things.
Yeah.
That I either want to work in the MBA as a general manager, or I want to do criminal law. So I ended up doing one of those. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And so the MBA was kind of just was going to add to that for you.
Well, I thought it would give me good exposure to, if I wanted to eventually have my own practice, what does business look like?
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it would be kind of an interesting thing to do. And then I also like the idea of, I know, just an ego thing. You're like, oh yeah, just, throw that on the wall back. Oh, you got your JD. Because one of the things that, and I try to do a better job of managing my ego these days through meditation, and kind of, life is humbling. And, anytime you get too high, there's a good chance you'll get smacked down. You don't have to even work for it, really. Something will happen, maybe you'll get sick. Someone will get sick. Job will take a turn. It's okay. You don't have to anticipate it. It'll happen. That summer before I went to law school, I would tell people like, oh, I'm going to law school. And they'd be like, oh, that's great. Like, where are you going? Or it started with the LSAT. Like, oh, you took the LSAT. Like, how'd you do? I did pretty good. Like, oh, what'd you get? Oh, 161. Oh, you know what's funny? My brother got like a 178. Like, there was always like every time I told someone what I get, they knew someone who like just somehow blew me out of the water. And then once I got into law school, it was one of those like, oh, you're going to Southern. Oh, cool. Yeah. My sister's boyfriend, he's going to Harvard. Yeah. He's like the same age as you. Yeah. Like every time. And it just pissed me off.
Yeah.
And I just didn't let that go. I was like, no. So then part of the MBA was like, oh, you just got a JD? That's so cool. Oh, I got my MBA too.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted that.
Yeah.
I wanted it. Yeah.
So there was a little ego. There was a little ego driving you through a lot of things right at the time.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that has shifted for you over the years. So, so take us.
I still hate
forward.
to lose. For what it's worth, I hate to lose, and I'm trying to manage. There's a great phrase I like. It's called "play stupid games, win stupid prizes," and I think about that almost every day because, like right now, for example, I play fantasy football, and I'm playing one of my best friends tonight, and it's like the last game, and it's to like the first round of the playoffs, and I'm like, I have to pick one of two players to play, and I need like 4 points. So either one should get me there, but I'm like, I have to beat this guy. It's one of my best friends, and it would just stick it to him because it'd be twice this year that I've beaten him. But then I'm like, this is so stupid. I'm probably going to get killed next week by like the number one guy. It doesn't even matter. I can't control this. The game is on the West Coast. I don't know these people.
Right.
It's like, I'm literally have other priorities. I have a son, and here I am sitting there going, do I play this running back or this running back? So I'm trying to manage. I just like to win everything. But the problem is, as you know, time just shrinks as you get older and you get different priorities.
And priorities shift a lot when you have a child too. Your perspective on everything changes, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. But it's like, it's so funny though, because I'm like, I think now about, job and career and start, trying to make some other money, doing other things. But then there's just that part of me that's like, I really want to stick it to Craig.
Well, it sounds like you're having fun with that too. It's not a serious stick it to him. It's more like, I'm just having some fun with this. And you've had a lot of things since law school. You've done a lot of different things. Take us there. I want to hear about your experience after law school, because you've really gone in a few different directions, and you've also served our country in the Army National Guard as well. And I want to make sure we acknowledge that. Thank you for your service. So that's an important piece as well. So take us forward from law school onward.
So I got my JD MBA. I had excellent grades in law school. I got close to 4.09 my MBA classes. I'm like king of the world in my head. And I get this job at a company called ACO. ACO does wealth management as a part of Goldman Sachs. So now Mr. Hotshot attorney gets a job working for Goldman Sachs. And then I took the bar, passed the bar, and I had this job. And I'd met with an alum through a different professor who said, the job is fulfilling. You can make good money. Like it's a good deal. You get to travel. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I get there, and this was kind of another kick in the teeth kind of deal where there's like what I thought was professionalism. And then there's working with people worth tens of millions of dollars where they have high stakes jobs as COOs, CEOs of Fortune 100 companies. Like these are people whose time is very limited, and they're doing a lot of stuff. And for me, it probably took a good year and a half to really start figuring out like what that professionalism looks like in terms of I remember one day I went to a client meeting with my then manager, and we leave, and she would not want to pull punches. And she made some comment like, you look like you're wearing your dad's suit. Like fix that for next one. Because it was just kind of a little baggy and stuff like that. So that job, I did that for about 2.5 years. But while I was there, I remember I had a moment where I didn't get promoted after like a year. And they said that if you pass the way it was told to me, and this is on me, was if you pass your Series 6, your Series 7 and Series 66 trading licenses, as long as you do it within your first year, you'll get promoted to the next step. So I did that. I was always a great test taker, no problem.
Yeah.
But what I didn't do is I didn't check in enough with my manager to really know what else was going on. And first off, I didn't know if that was the case. I just heard it. And then I didn't really talk to her about what I was doing, progress and all this stuff. So here I come to like this first year, and it's like the day of the holiday party. day of the holiday party. I'm thinking, oh, I'll get, they're going to promote me, whatever. I walk in her office and the head guy's like, actually, I hate to say this, but you're really not quite where we want to be. And it was just like another like thud moment. And then the holiday party was that night. And like everyone was going to know that I was like the only person of my class who didn't get promoted, which really wasn't that bad considering one person in my class got fired. So I was still ahead of them. But I didn't get promoted. And I remember going home and I was like, I can't go. And I was dating someone at the time who it didn't work out, fantastic woman. And she was like, you need to go. You need to show them that this doesn't bother you. And I said, okay. So I went and everyone was really nice and supportive. And then the next go around, I hustled and then I did get the promotion. And that was actually big for me because during that time, I kind of realized I didn't like their investment style and I wanted to do something different. But I told myself, you have worked too hard to not get promoted at Goldman Sachs at least once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I did.
Yeah. And then you moved on, right?
Yeah. So during that time, it's kind of funny. I think of it as like I became like an investment dissident. So you know how people they become like political dissidents. I was like an investment dissident. So we had like this investment philosophy and I was like, I don't think I'm buying it. And I started looking into other investment philosophies and I came around to, I think I'm more of a value investor. So just a high level, ACO was more basics, like market, do a couple fun things here and there, but kind of more bland wealth management. At least that's how it was at the time and how I viewed it. Mm-hmm. And I thought the fees were kind of high. Then there's another company called Kovitz I had heard about, and they did value based, which is the more Warren Buffett, Dodd Graham, like, finding companies that they think are undervalued based on their fundamentals, trying to buy them when they're at their lowest and holding them for call it 3 to 5 years and then valuing. So I started to like that. I read the Intelligent Investor. I read that like I got stuck in an airport one time for like 16 hours and I just like read as much as I could. And then I applied to Kovitz. And then I went in for an informational interview. They didn't have an opening. And they said, well, when we do, we'll let you know. And then I want to say it was Memorial Day, 2016. They're like, actually, yeah, we have an opening. Do you want it? So I was at ACO for almost 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then I transitioned to Kovitz, and Kovitz was a nice place because it was at the time I was working in the Chicago suburbs and I was living mm-hmm. in the city. Mm-hmm. So I had to do this reverse commute, which for those of you that aren't familiar with Chicago, living in the city to come out is the worst case scenario because you have to wake up super early. So like for me, if I didn't get on the road by like 6:25, every minute after that was like 2 on the road. Like if I got 6:20 or 6:25, 45 minute drive, 6:30 and after hour plus. So I had to get up pretty early. And then Kovitz was in the city. I could take they have great transit, Chicago. I could take the transit. It was going to be a big raise. And I kind of wanted to do the big city thing. I lived in the city. I wanted to work there. Yeah. It was right in the downtown, the Loop. I could walk at lunch. At one point I got a pass to the art museum and I would go to the art museum at lunch and just kind of check out all the impressionist paintings. So it was a cool gig.
Mm. So you got a taste for different kinds of investing, different kinds of company cultures, and then so in those roles, were you really were you practicing law at all, or were you managing investments? What were you doing in these companies?
I wasn't practicing law.
Okay.
And it was very, here's your assets. Let's talk about your risk tolerance, figure out where you're at. Let's mm-hmm. look at, cash flow. A lot of them they were executives, so they have executive compensation, stock options, things like that. And then one of the things, this is a recurring theme, is that I would tell people, I'm a lawyer. And they're like, well, what do you do? And I'd say, oh, I'm in wealth management. And then they'd say, well, you're not really a lawyer. And I'm like, no, I passed the bar. And they're like, yeah, but you don't do law. You're just kind of like a financial planner guy. So so I was like,
right.
I could do law. And they're like, right. Yeah, but you don't really do law.
Right.
So that annoyed me. And then, then I'm doing,
you did something about it, didn't you?
I did. While I was at Kovitz, I started doing volunteer legal work. Chicago Volunteer Legal Services. So trying to get a little taste of it. And then I would apply for jobs here and there. I remember one time I applied for this job. I'm not going to say the place, but I like showed, it was like an hour and a half drive. I show up, there's like no one at the door. Somehow I get in and I'm just walking around this building. Like nobody's asking me who I am. They're just kind of looking at me. I'm like, what kind of place is this? Have an interview. It's a disaster. And they're like, well, because they started asking me questions. That's another thing. I think people, if you want to explore a career, you should just apply to these jobs and just let them ask you questions so you can figure out what you're eventually going to have to answer. They, well, what's your book of business like? Oh, wealth management? No. Your legal stuff. I'm like, well, I do like a case every, a couple months. They're like, oh, you don't have like 10 or 20 at a time. I'm like, well, no, I'm in wealth management. They're like, oh, well, we need someone with experience. So I'm like, okay, I don't have any experience. I want to do this because wealth management was fun, but I kind of was like, you know what? I don't want to, you get to a point where you're working on other people's books and they're starting to give you clients and then you're trying to, and it's like, okay, you got to start reaching out for people of your own. I didn't feel ethically good about asking people to come on board, knowing that I was going to leave and knowing that I told them I'm probably going to leave at some point. So a friend of mine comes in town, and that's another thing I do a great job of is I keep in touch with people. And so then I keep that I talk to people all the time, and then eventually, oh, hey, I'm in town, let's get lunch. And my friend tells me he's part of the Illinois Army National Guard as a lawyer.
Okay.
And I'm like, a lawyer in the Army? Like, I didn't know that was a thing. And I'd watched A Few Good Men about 1,000 times. And Kevin Bacon is an Army attorney and Tom Cruise is a Navy attorney. And I watched that movie and I went, wow, that's such a good movie. Now I wonder how I get into law. If only there was some large agency or thing that might hire lawyers all the time. I don't know what that is. I guess I'll go back to my job and complain. So I started applying to get in the Army. I was applying Army and Air Force. And sure enough, I got in. And it took me about a year and a half. And then, And then at that point, I did a leave of absence from my job because I wasn't going to burn that bridge because you never know. But I think in my head, I said, okay, I'm probably never coming back here. So what I'll do is while I'm gone, I'll apply for prosecutor jobs. And actually, before I had left, I had applied for one in Winnebago County, Illinois. And I had gotten an offer, but I said, I'm going away for this. It was right before. So the Army said, you're going away. And then they said no. And then they said yes. So if you're in the military, I didn't know this at the time, but that's why they call it being ready. Like you have to be ready at a moment's notice. Right. So they said, actually, you're not going to go. And then I got the offer. And then like maybe that day they were like, actually, you're going to go in the next tranche, which would be beginning March 2020. So I said, yeah, right. So then sure enough, I go to my Army training. So it's 6 weeks in Fort Benning of like basic Army skills. And then the second 12 is in Charlottesville, Virginia, where you do all lawyer Army stuff. And so I get there, it's like March 7th. So for those of you listening, March 7th, 2020, like was anything going on?
About a week before.
Yeah. Yep. So COVID hits and it's just an adventure. And every day we just kind of have to deal with it and figure it out. But yeah, we went from literally being at like a Mexican restaurant, having like a group meal one night and taking pictures and all this stuff to the next day being like masks on and you are not to leave this like 300-yard area. They call it the footprint. If you leave the footprint, you're kicked out of the Army, like dishonorable discharge.
Yeah.
Oh, that escalated real quick. It was that one day where I think the NCAA canceled their tournament. The NBA canceled like everything just, it was like, I think it was, boom. Right.
So, so that was the beginning of a period of time that we are, as of recording this conversation, we were in the middle of. So from that time till now, what have you been doing?
So while I was there, I started applying. I applied for some jobs, and then I would keep in touch with Winnebago County, which is funny because right now we're very stable. But one of the jokes of Winnebago County is like they're always hiring because that's how I found out about it. Is I was on a job board and someone goes, "Oh, just apply Winnebago County." I'm like, I don't have experience. They're like, doesn't matter. They'll hire you. It was like, really? They're, yeah, sure enough, they did. But so everything's good now. And shout out to my employer; they're fantastic. But so then I'm doing the Army thing. I'm keeping in touch with Winnebago County. And then while I was in Charlottesville, I ended up meeting someone out there, a very lovely lady. And then we did some distant social or some Zoom dates and things like that. And then we eventually got to hike and do some stuff outdoors, and we really hit it off. And then I get an offer from Winnebago County officially to start in mid-August. I kept pushing it back. They're like, "You want to start mid-July?" I'm like, "Nah, about end of July." And then they're like, "End of July?" I'm like, "Nah, about mid-August." And then so I was kind of dating this girl, and I'd come off a relationship from previous, and that girl kind of came back in my life, and I didn't really know what to do, but I had a really good feeling about the person I had met. And I said, "Hey, I know this is kind of abrupt, but do you want to take a 2-week vacation with me starting on July 2nd? And we'd know each other for like 7 weeks. And she's like, "Yeah, let's do that." I was like, "Okay." So I'd heard that from Bill Murray. Bill Murray had some quote, like, if you want to know if you want to be with someone, travel around the world with them for like a week. Yeah. So we did. We saw the fireworks in DC on the 4th. We went to South Carolina, just laid on a beach for a while. And then I came back, started my job. And then a couple months later, find out that we're going to have a son. Actually didn't know it was a son time. Found out we're going to have a baby.
Yeah.
And then so then I'm doing my prosecutor job while doing the Army thing. And then the January 6th stuff happens. I end up going to DC for 3 weeks. I end up leaving my job for 3 weeks, going to DC, being one of the lawyers on site, which is a really cool experience. I'm very lucky. I was one of like the 2 or 3 judge advocates for the second group that went there, which is just, it's kind of one of those weird things where you're like watching the news, and the news is kind of about like what you're doing.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
It was crazy. So I did that, came back. And then since then I've been a full-time prosecutor in Winnebago County. I do misdemeanor. Right now I'm doing misdemeanors. I've also done domestic violence. I was in a domestic violence courtroom for a while. We had our son, Mirko, in June of 2021. I need to know this. Yeah. End of June 2021. Yeah. So he's almost 6 months old. And it's been just, so
now you have another career change, right? You're now a dad.
Yeah. That's the most important one. I always kind of viewed being a parent as about, I think that's really like the highest first off, the highest compliment anyone can give me is they want to have a child with me. Shout out to my girlfriend, who's amazing. And then just, I had wonderful parents, and the idea that I can help him, it's the most fulfilling and wonderful thing I can ever imagine, but it's also the most terrifying.
I agree with you. So we're about to wrap things up here. I know that one thing that you've talked about recently is also picking up on your wealth management, financial planning background, and thinking about as much as you're finding your prosecutor role and your role with the Army is fulfilling, in terms of your practice as a lawyer, you are looking at reincorporating your background in wealth management and financial planning again.
So I want to take it one step back. So one of my kind of life philosophies I mentioned earlier is I like a high floor and an uncapped ceiling. So that's one of the reasons. And I started my podcast in 2020, Laugh and Learn with Vern. So that's like I like to interview people. And one of the reasons I started it is I thought that I like to talk to people. I think I'm building an interesting kind of background. And I think that all these experiences give me better ways to communicate with people. And that one was another where I reached out to Alan. Alan was the guy who, if you recall, I did that sales office with, right? Didn't learn from him. I said, "Hey, what do you think?" And we started talking. He's like, "Yeah, you should just do it." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Dude, it's a pandemic. Everyone's at home."
Right.
So I started this podcast, and that was I enjoy doing comedy. I had done stand-up off and on for a few years prior to that, just because I had a wedding I was going to be the best man in. I needed some public speaking experience. So I'd done that in Toastmasters. So I figured between those two, I would be able to do some podcasting. And the Toastmasters and the comedy really helped me in the courtroom too.
Ah,
the public speaking aspect. And I'd done improv comedy in Chicago at Second City. And that's good for the legal because you got to be quick on your feet, especially if when the judge was asking a question. I mean, you got to be truthful and honest, but you can word things in a way that's truthful and honest. that maybe takes a little bit of heat off you. Like, yes, Your Honor, you're right. We haven't done that. However, we did do this. And we are in the process of doing this. So you're still going to get a little bit admonished, but maybe it's not as bad if you remember like, oh, I did do these things, instead of just being like, deer in the headlights. I'm sorry. Like it's not going to fly.
That's a really interesting connection though. I love the way you're not just making the connection. You're using all of these different experiences and connecting them all. I love that.
I think that's, especially for, the guests you have on here, I think it's very important for people that listen to always take inventory of their skills and try to figure out what they've done, because a lot of people they have these experiences and they breeze past them. And one of the things that I've been able to do is look back and say like, well, I have had sales experience. Well, how can I apply that to getting podcast guests, getting on a podcast, right? I use for you, I tried to use the persuasion of knowing we have a mutual friend, Jennifer Fondreve. She's been on and I listened to her and how she talked and said, I think this actually be a good fit for you. I think it makes sense. So, thinking those, some of the skills I built younger translated to here. And then I think about, you talked about the financial planning. So I'm going to do some financial planning on the side. And one of the reasons I think it's going to be fun for me, because before I was working for someone else. Now this is like, I'm free to do it whenever I want.
Right.
I think I can do it over Zoom. I think that'll work out.
Oh yeah.
Sales. I like the idea of doing sales, trying to get clients. I like the idea of helping people.
Yes.
And I think that really right now, especially with how inflation is, and there's just with COVID, it's just been such a rocky time. I think that being able to help people, even if the message you're giving them is, hey, you need to get it together, at least you're helping them realize that message instead of them kind of floating through the ether, thinking everything's okay. Like me at the end of college, oh yeah, I'll be fine. And then it turns out actually, this is not okay. So trying to help people to avoid that cliff at the end.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate what you're saying about that, and think that there will be maybe people listening here who might give you a call and say, I'd love to hear what you have to say about how I can manage some things better, because I think we are headed into a period of time where we're going to be dealing with more inflation for sure. I want to ask you one question that I always ask my guests towards the end of our conversation, and that is because a lot of the people in this audience are themselves considering a potential transition or change in their lives, in their careers. So what would be one key piece of advice that you would give someone who's beginning to think about their next move? What would you give them?
Research it until you can explain it on a fundamental level to someone who doesn't know anything about it. Because if you can explain that career to someone, that means you understand it enough, and then you're more able to assess the risks, the pros, the cons, and then make an informed decision. I've said a couple of times, like, yeah, I just jumped. I've never just jumped. I always take my time. I think things through. Before I agreed to go to Southern Illinois University, I looked at the pros and cons with my dad. I looked into the university. I knew the financial aspects. So I knew front and back about that university. And then, like you said, it was a blink kind of decision. So for someone out there thinking about switching careers, for now, so I took a pay cut to do what I'm doing now. But I figured out, okay, so that's the case. I'm going to need to move. Okay. Well, then I said, okay, the Army was part of that. Well, I'll join the Army. I'll go away for training. I can save money. It'll buy me some time to figure out where I need to live geographically, and then kind of figure out what that lifestyle looks like and how I can do that. And I was able to and continue to do that now.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, Eric, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story and for walking us down the path back and forth of your life to date. It's been really, really fun to hear about it. And thank you for your transparency, and wishing you all the best as you go forward. And we will have all the links and appropriate connections to you in our show notes. So thank you so much for being here today.
Tammy, thank you so much for having me. And to everyone out there, Tammy, obviously you've made the leap. You have a book coming out, which I'm sure we'll be hearing about very soon if you haven't already been. Just do the research and then just go for it. I would guess, Tammy, I'll throw this on you. Happiness, how do you feel?
Happiness, how do I feel?
Well, do you think you made the right decision?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Totally. Yes.
I feel the same way. So do your homework, make the decision, and then you're going to be successful. Enjoy it, and then reach out to Tammy, and maybe you'll be the next guest.
There you go. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Eric Vernsten. It was so interesting to speak with him about his personal and professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the blog page of my website at www.tammygoolerloeb.com. Just look for episode 168. Are you thinking about what your next professional move is going to be? Maybe you're just feeling a little stuck. I would love it if you picked up my new book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available in print and digital ebook editions through my website, Amazon Worldwide, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or you can request it through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Eric, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd really appreciate reading your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at tammygoolerloeb.com. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. I'd love to hear how it's going for you. Feel free to drop me a line. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.